name is Maria Montserrat, and today I'm going to be presenting on sense of identity and the effects of transhumanism on society, which is basically what my essay was about. Alrighty, to give you a little bit about context on what Johnny Mnemonics was, so the short story, Johnny is a data courier, and basically what this means is that he is paid by practically strangers and anyone to carry their own memory, their own data in his head, because he had this surgery where he can uphold a lot of data and memories. And pretty much in the short story, a job goes wrong and he's hunted by dangerous enemies after that. All of this stays true in the adaptation movie. However, we add a layer of conflict. It involves corporate control and a deadly tech-related disease. So it becomes not only about Johnny's survival, but about the whole world. And this leads us to my thesis statement, which reads, through the adaptation's focus on declining health, the danger of memory loss, fluid appearance norms, and communities formed through resistance, it expands Gibson's original message into a wider caution about what happens when technology begins to replace the core elements that make us human. Alrighty, and the first subject that I really focused on my essay is my first body paragraph here, which talks about declining health, specifically the spread of nerve attenuation syndrome. And this is a disease that is introduced in the adaptation, but it wasn't in the short story. And we'll talk a little bit more about what it means. Pretty much, in the short story, to give you some background, we have this very important character called Molly Millions, and she has a bunch of technological augmentations. If you look at this picture here, she has inserted lenses, she has claws coming out, and she has really quick reflexes. However, nowhere is it said that it had any bad effect on her health as a user. On the contrary, here we have Jane, and Jane is Molly's parallel character in the adaptation, and in the scene that we have right here, she just recovered from going through the Black Shakes, and the Black Shakes is a system of NAS. And pretty much the best way to explain how NAS is contacted is through Spider's explanation that it's on the TVs on the wall, it's on the electronic waves in the air. Pretty much no matter what you do, the environment in which Johnny Mnemonics takes place is already toxic because of the airways and all this technological overload, and that's what brings about NAS. So you really can't escape it because it's all around you, it's all this technology around you. And it kind of warns viewers in a way about what may happen if we keep prioritizing technological advancement to the point that it just explodes everywhere and we're no longer prioritizing our human health. A little bit of research to back this up, we have researcher Palu and his sisters and brothers. They argue that constant reliance on AI creates a growing dependence on intelligent technology. So pretty much, it kind of argues that the reason why this world, they're so used to using all this technology, even though it's harming their health, they've grown this dependency on it, and that's why that can't go back from that. The adaptation incorporates this warning to reflect our own society's rapid tech adoption. So every day there's a new iPhone coming out, and every year there's a new computer that's coming out. Technological overload is already happening. And it's basically telling us to slow down and have some critical reflection of what might happen if it's a disease like NAS or anything else before we continue with this motion. Which leads me to my second body paragraph, which talks about memories and identity. Specifically, authentic memories are essential for building a sense of self. So pretty much, in the short story, we hear about how Johnny feels hollow and disconnected from himself. The film intensifies this theme by showing exactly which memories he's lost, and we find out that he has no recollection about his childhood at all. This creative choice makes Johnny look more personal, but also helps us as the audience to understand his level of desperation to regain that sense of identity. And I'm going to explain why in just a second. We have some research that kind of back up this claim. Kosik and Lazaro Munoz explain that the neural networks that form and perform identity are already established by adulthood. What that means is that now that Johnny is already in his adulthood, and he doesn't have these memories from his childhood that make his sense of identity. He doesn't have it because he doesn't have his childhood, which is what our sense of identity is based out of. More than this, sense of identity is critical for human survival. It's our prenatal tendency to achieve this. So without it, that's why it catalyzes all these actions that Johnny goes through in order to attain it. That's why it's so important. And the way that this is best incorporated in the film is best explained through Hutchins' theory that film requires characters to physically that the reason why we're really able to see desperation and how far Johnny will go to reclaim his sense of identity is through the film and being able to see all these visual graphics and these very disturbing graphics at times. Which led me to my third body paragraph, appearance and identity. And basically here we talk about how in both the short story adaptation they portray appearance identity as fluid. However, the film intensifies this by visually highlighting how originality is more important than conformity in appearance and how identity is kind of cultivated in that. So one of the most standout features are those of the low techs. If you look at this picture here, we have two low techs, and they kind of wear these baggy garments. They're brown, kind of black garments, and they also have this black face tattoo, and it's very intrinsic to their identity. Another standout feature are Ralphie's bodyguards. They have this like drag queen-like makeup, like very unique and eccentric features, and it kind of argues that survival requires cultivating this unique appearance, because if not, you're just a computer code and you're not really unique or stand out in any way. Another reason why we see these like very graphic and kind of like out there appearances is because in this world, transhumanistic privilege exists. So the more you embody these transhumanist features, the more this privilege you will get. So it's kind of like pretty privileged today, they'll receive like this transhumanist privilege just by embodying those features. And last but not least, that leads me to this community and how in this movie and adaptation, community is represented through groups united by social change and retaliation. So one of the biggest contrasts here are the low techs, which are the rebels in this movie. They're the ones who are trying to get the social change, and they mobilize in larger numbers. While on the other hand, the characters driven by wealth and corporate power are isolated and lonely, which kind of shows the difference in between, okay, there's community in those who are trying to get this social change, but there's not really a sense of community in the rich because they're just going there for power. They don't have like intrinsic like retaliation mode that really brings them together. And the reason why the adaptation has this is best explained through Hutchins' idea that adaptations develop their own aura. So in the short story, we didn't have the problem that the world was being contacted by NAS or that corporations were taking over. Because of this, the movie had to kind of develop its own aura in a sense, and that's why we can really see the difference between community in the movie. All these points taken together bring me to my conclusion, in that there is a clear warning being portrayed in the adaptation in which, as society pushes technological augmentation, the human core of identity becomes increasingly at risk. This was portrayed in the short story, but it just really, drilled into in this adaptation. Thank you so much for your time. Any questions?